the process, right? But if a contractor on a line that's out in Des Moines says he doesn't do that, we fail, okay? So one of the things that we did was we made sure our standard work was already something that our practitioners did. That's why we call it practitioner-led. It's extremely important. If your practitioners don't believe in it, then they're going to go into a CMMI assessment and say, I don't do that, and you failed, okay? So what we learned is if you're not really creating buy-in by allowing your practitioners to define the process, it's not a top-down situation, it's a bottom-up situation. And they need to have buy-in you need to create the buy-in of your practitioners for your standard work. If you don't, you will fail. And one of the things we learned from the assessor, the reason they do that is because no process is sustainable if your practitioners don't believe in it, okay? Extremely important. Also, simplest thing that works. There are 245 different practices in CMMI Level 3. Is that simple? No, not at all. We ended up, go ahead. Developers, testers, people on Agile teams, iteration managers or Scrum Masters. We even had ADLs because a lot of the practices were kind of management practices. So we went to them and said, okay, help us. You know, what do you do? Let's write it down. Write it down. What do you do? And we created a template, you know, a process template, and said, write it down. And when we went to do our training to all of these lines, we would actually iterate through the training. So we'd take 2 lines at a time, and if they said, we don't do it that way, or our language is different, we would find a compromise, okay? So that teams believed in that. And then we'd go back to the teams and say, hey, can you do this? They're like, yeah, we get it. We understand it. It's the same thing. We're doing the same thing. Okay? So where was I? Simplest thing that works. No 40-page process document. Everything we do is 1 page. All of our processes, everything you saw on that is a 1-page process. Okay? Now we have supporting documentation under that. But 1-page process. Extremely important. Don't make it difficult. One of the things that I learned when we were going through this was you don't have to write your processes for people who have never done software development. Don't do that. Write your processes as though they know how to do software development. They've had some experience. Because if you're hiring people that's never done software development in their life, you're in trouble. And a lot of times we get tech writers to do our process documentation, and they spend more time trying to write it for someone who has never done software development. We didn't do that. We took our practitioners' words and we put it to paper. This is what we do. It really helped us get to a standard piece of work that everybody agreed to very quickly. Go ahead.
The story cards, how did you keep your story cards simple but have enough detail to make them effective in development and testing?
So the idea of a story card is it's a placeholder for a conversation. Okay? If you need to write something down, write it down. Okay? If you need more behind the story card, write it down. The reality is you're all in the same space. You all should have that conversation. Okay? So actually within our processes, we don't do anything in silos. So when requirements are built and transitioned into build, the whole team gets together to work on design. Why? Because they then understand how to write the test, how to write the code, and the requirements person is understanding or giving them information on really what that card should be. Okay? That's the concept of whole team. Bring everybody together, okay, and really have them work together for the problem, on the problem. Now, if you need, some teams need to document. Go ahead, okay, if you need to. I actually, we take pictures a lot. If you're writing on a whiteboard, take a picture, store it, save it. Guess what? That's documentation. Okay? We actually have a process that we call whiteboard design. So everybody wants to do a big design document, right? No. If you need to do design, write it on the board. Okay? Get agreement with everyone. Your tester, your developer, Bring the world if you want. We don't care. And when everybody agrees, take a picture and move on. Does that help?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
A couple years later, what happens now with the documentation of the architecture?
What happens later with the doc? So we do have, and when you're in a big organization, you have a lot of architects. What do architects like to do? Draw on the board, create diagrams and stuff like that. We do compromise with high-level design. We do that. We maintain that. Our assets maintain that. They need to maintain that. But we do believe that if you want detailed design, you can go get a tool to refactor it, or you can look at my tests.
Reverse engineering.
You got it. You can reverse engineer it, or you can look at my J units, and that'll tell you exactly what's going on. Because remember, that's your harness for design change. If I need to make a design change, that J unit is going to capture any issues. Okay. So build your code. First of all, build your code so people can read it. Okay. That's the first thing. Second of all, build some good quality J units so you have a harness in case something happens in the future. Very important. Okay? So, simplest thing that works. Where are we today? We are a world-class development center. I can say that. We are CMMI level 3. That's considered world-class. We have 26 teams, and we're counting. And what I mean by that is we have a vision that we're probably going to double or triple our size right now. Very large. We have documented development processes with supporting curriculum, maturity assessments, and metrics. Let that sink in. How many of you have metrics? Do you believe in them? We do. Okay? Important because when you scale, if you don't have supporting curriculum, if you don't have a way to scale the knowledge of your teams, you're gonna fall down. You're not going to be able to scale. We have high-performing teams. This is actually a conservative number. How many saw Michael Mall's presentation? Michael works for the QSM company. They sell a product called Slim, so I'm promoting it for him. Slim, we leverage Slim in order to determine productivity of our lines, which we then turn into cost savings. Right now, on a conservative basis, we're seeing a 15% savings across the board for all of our lines, based on the industry average. This is huge for us. This is how we maintain what we're doing, because now we have proof that we are better than the industry. It's not just about CMMI. It's now about ongoing metrics so that we can monitor and prove that we're actually either getting better or better than the industry.
Is that better than the Agile teams or better than?
This is better than the industry. We are actually working with Michael to get Agile. Actually, it's not Agile first. We are more concerned about offshore and making sure we're better than offshore. QSM's working on trend lines or industry numbers for offshore development, and we're going to compare ourselves to them. Because if you listen to Michael last year, he talked a lot about how Agile is actually bringing offshore work back to the States, and they have proof. Well, we're going to benchmark ourselves against that. We want to show that we're better than offshore. That's huge for us.
What are you measuring as far as the lines of code?
Slim focuses on lines of code. So, for example, we produced about, and this is we actually do, it's kind of a standard deviation of projects or releases. We've produced about 1 million lines of code so far through April this year, and our productivity based on those lines of code and the effort it took to do that, we saved the company about $2.5 million compared to the industry cost of the same amount of lines of code. Those are the numbers that we're taking to our executives and saying, look, we're doing good.
What are the two numbers again?
About 1 million lines of code through April. Actually, we've done more than that, but that's the standard deviation, the sampling of what we're doing. And we're about 2.5 million in savings. Actually, it's a little more than that, 2.59, something like that. How were the savings determined? based on industry average.
Savings on what? So you're saying that the industry staff, the development team, their costs would be $2.5 million more to get that 91 code?
Yeah, so the effort to produce 1 million lines of code and the cost associated with that, the industry would be $2.5 million more to do the same. Go ahead.
Do you have any benchmark against the other teams in nationwide? How you are doing against them?
Say it again. Against who?
Against the other teams in nationwide, like you have some people who are working for ADC, and then you have
Yep.
thousands of people who are not.
So we ran a pilot in 2010, and we brought in our Agile teams and compared them against some of our, what we call our waterfall teams. We were consistently, we call it a trend line for how many lines of code were developed. The nationwide Agile teams were consistently below industry average. The waterfall teams were above. So even the gap between us and the industry, there's more of a gap between us and other nationwide waterfall projects. So it's not just about productivity, right? Cost. It's about quality. In 2010, the final 23 releases by the Dev Center, or 26 releases in the Dev Center, 23 of those releases had 0 production defects. Our last critical production defects that we introduced into production happened in August of 2010. We are now, and I don't know how your companies are, but at Nationwide, that's very unusual. Very unusual. We have a very, we have 1,000, 1,200 applications with a lot of technical debt out there, a lot of defects. And for us to be implementing code into production without introducing new technical debt is a huge cost savings for the organization. And we're just now trying to figure out how to quantify that. And I'm actually working with Michael, and Michael and I had a conversation yesterday about how we could do that. So if it's very difficult for people to understand the cost savings of that, we're going to attempt to do it. We'll see how it happens. And if anybody has any ideas, come see me afterward, okay? Because that is extremely difficult. So how does it all fit together? Agile, software development techniques, quality, predictability, right? Lean, enterprise scalability, management systems, standard work, Kaizen, okay? CMMI, benchmarking was really our burning platform. It's what we did to make sure we could get better or be good quickly. Uh-oh. Am I dead? All right, I promised some pictures. Here are some pictures of the Application Development Center. You'll notice some boards that are blue. Hopefully you can see that. We have monitors, 42-inch monitors in our rooms for big visibles, okay, if there's any type of metrics that we need to show. We use standardized visual management. So our blue whiteboards with blue background is actually standard boards in every room. Every room has to populate that. We use those for gimbal walks. They have many other boards that they can leverage. So not all teams only use those boards, but they have to, okay? Our environment is completely open. We literally have gutted 3 floors from the ground up, built Agile teams in spaces from the ground up. The entire environment is Agile. I'm a director, and I actually sit in an open space. I don't have a cube. I don't believe in that, and we all don't believe in that. We actually have, as I said, the Gemba space. It's an entire open space, and we have nothing but directors in it. So that's important. Okay? So that's it. Questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I asked you about offshore earlier, and you said you guys don't have any offshore components.